Survival Dispatch, in partnership with Carnival, just dropped a Christmas deal that actually makes you harder to kill. So from now until December 23rd at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, every $100 that you spend at carnival.com is one virtual raffle ticket that you automatically get entered into a drawing. And on Christmas Eve, we'll pull 5 lucky names, and the winners will get a prize package fit for Santa himself. Each one of the prizes will include 1 beef family pack, as well as 2 beef, 2 chicken, and 2 pork single-serving packs from Carnival. Where they're also going to throw in a Carnival tee and a Carnival hat, so you guys can wear that swag and brag to all of your friends that you were one of the lucky winners. But not to be outdone, Survival Dispatch has brought their A game as well, and we are offering 5 lifetime Guardian membership. You get 6 private encrypted signal channels, Survival Dispatch emergency notification system, and the POC-Link Ultra radio channel if you have those items as a part of your membership. But our current subscribers to the annual subscription are not to be left out in the cold this winter. Every time you spend over $99 at Carnival, you just email your receipt to support@survivaldispatch.com, and we will tack on 30 days to your annual membership. So don't delay and head over to Carnival and start buying that meat with no mRNA injections, no antibiotics, the perfect addition to your preps this winter. So don't delay and get started right now with Survival Dispatch and Carnival. And from each and every one of us, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
We are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Randy Nance, combat wounded Green Beret back home in Texas. And below us, our in-house 007, Jeff MD, author extraordinaire, 26-year CIA case officer. Jeff, did you happen to see the email that I forwarded to you earlier today from somebody who said that they were once in Winnipeg, Canada, and they had it on good authority that that's where 007 actually originated from? They were joking, but
well, you know, everybody's got to be from somewhere.
I guess so. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about,
he didn't say I'm Bond, James Bond, eh?
Right.
That's right.
A couple of years ago, somebody sent us hate mail saying that we should not be calling Jeff 007 because he's American, and everybody knows that the real 007 is from Winnipeg, Canada. Not from Great Britain, not from America, but Winnipeg, Canada. So go figure. Anyway, tonight is our next episode in our long war series. We're going to be discussing predictive policing and digital jails, digital prisons even. But before we do that, we're going to hit the conflicted question of the day first. So if you're not familiar with this, conflictofthegame.com, 14 card decks set, in post-apocalyptic scenarios. Many of the questions have some element of morality, hence the name conflicted. So weeks after the collapse of society, one man in your survivalist group accused another of murder. The accused denies everything. The scene where the murder supposedly took place is far away. You couldn't really verify the facts without risking someone's life. It comes down to one man's word against another. If it were up to you to decide if the man is guilty or innocent, what questions would you ask, and how would you make up your mind? Interesting. So the three of us are going to answer that question at the end of tonight's broadcast. We want to see your answers in the live chat in the comments section down below. I got a couple things, guys, that didn't make it into the brief earlier, but this is pretty cool from our friends at Carnival. So a number of states are waking up. We were one of the first here in Florida. Texas just became the 7th American state to officially ban lab-grown meat, joining Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Montana, Nebraska, and Indiana. Our laws have dramatically improved under Ron DeSantis, and this is one of the things that he brought to the table. But you're also not allowed to glue shit together and sell it as premium cuts here in Florida either. It's happening in some other states where they glue bits and pieces of steak together and say, look, it's a prime rib, and you can pay X dollars per pound.
Well, isn't it crazy, though, Chris, that we even got to come up with a law that says this?
It is. It's just unbelievable what these people will pass off as food. But anyway, I don't know if you want to add anything to that or not, Jeff, but I'm assuming you're not a big fan of lab-grown meat.
Yeah, no, I'm not. It's because it's frankenfood. You have no clue what's really in it.
Well, I mean, you didn't get the memo from Bill Gates. It's good for you.
It's Soylent Green for all
It's
we
good
know.
for you. Yeah, put hair on your chest.
Yeah.
All right.
There.
Next one up. Breaking Sydney Hanukkah massacre. New details. New details have emerged about the terror attack at Bondi Beach. During the first night of Hanukkah, the terrorists threw 4 explosive devices into the crowd. 3 pipe bombs plus 1 device disguised as a tennis ball. All failed to detonate, preventing an even larger massacre. The attackers, trained in advance, filmed a justification video and posed with ISIS flags. They scouted the site days earlier, confirming premeditation. So that just took things to a whole new level there. Jeff, do you want to weigh in on that? Obviously, they had some more sophisticated intentions than what they pulled off.
Well, they had intentions, but not skills, apparently. But why it took them this long to figure out that it was premeditated? 2 guys show up with guns and extra magazines and then start popping off people. It's so stupid. The idea that, well, now we know it's premeditated. Well, duh. This is stupid.
Well, how many times do you hear these, other Western governments saying, but we are unsure of the motive? Whenever shit happens, we don't know what the motive is. That immediately tells you exactly what the motive is, right, Randy?
Well, it tells you all you need to know, that they're not going to tell you the truth. And that's why they come up with that little thing. So they have time to either figure it out or wait till their handlers tell them what needs to be said next. It was also a father and son team. I mean, it doesn't get any more, and then, the good thing is the stuff didn't work. The bad thing is Khalid's already told us there would be preempts in other countries, so what we do know is they learned however their mechanisms were and all these little devices that didn't work, they'll probably do different mechanisms in them next time.
Yeah. Good assumption for sure. Good conclusion, I should say. So breaking DNI, Tulsi Gabbard just eviscerated the Islamist infiltration of America and Europe, says, wake up before it's too late. If we don't take action, don't call it out for what it is, we will find ourselves in a place where many European countries like Australia, well, Australia is not European, have found themselves. And I'm going to play the video instead of reading this off. It's 2 minutes and 23 seconds. I'll play the bulk of this video.
Talk about this Islamist ideology. Yes, it is the ideology that fuels terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Al-Shabaab and Hamas and Boko Haram and others. And they must be defeated militarily. As they continue to actively plot and try to attack us. They are a threat to our security and our safety. But this Islamist ideology is a direct threat to our freedom because at its core, it is a political ideology that seeks to create a global caliphate that governs us here in America, threatening Western civilization, governance by Sharia law, governance by what they are calling their Islamic principles. And if you fail to comply, if you fail to adhere to this ideology, if you dare to exercise your God-given right to free speech, censorship is not what we face. They will use violence or any means they deem as necessary to silence us. If we don't take action to identify this threat, to define it, to call it out for what it is, and take action to defeat it, then we will find ourselves in a place where many European countries and countries like Australia have found themselves. Countries where you can get arrested for praying silently on the street corner, as has happened in the UK. Countries where you can be arrested for putting up a social media post that someone finds offensive somewhere. The threats from this Islamist ideology come in many forms. As we approach Christmas right now in Germany, they are canceling Christmas markets because of this threat. In places like Dearborn, Michigan and Minneapolis, Minnesota, Islamist clerics are openly pushing this Islamist ideology, trying to recruit and radicalize young people. Earlier this year, there was a conference that was held representing organizations like the Council on American.
Boy, she said a mouthful there. Jeff, are there any policy changes you think the current administration could make without running afoul of lawsuits and the Constitution to somehow deal with this problem?
Well, running afoul of the Constitution, sure, they can limit, people coming into the country. There's nothing in the Constitution that says people from anywhere in the world are entitled to come to the United States. They just quite simply aren't. It's up to us who we let in. And toward the end of the last century, for about 40 or 50 years, we had basically no immigration whatsoever, because we let in like 30, 40 million people at the late of the 1800s, early 1900s. And the government said, enough, we need to let these people assimilate, so we're not going to bring in any more. As far as to avoid a lawsuit, Trump can't sneeze without getting sued. So there's always going to be a lawsuit, because it's the only arrow the Democrats have left in their quiver. They can't win on policy. They can't win in the House and the Senate, and they can't even win in public opinion. So they try to win in the courts with all these activist judges that Biden and Obama put in over the years. They're just thwarting the will of the people.
Are there any policy changes, though, to deal with the scumbags who are already here? How do you deal with Minneapolis, Dearborn, and other places like that?
Well, those guys, even if you're a legal immigrant, anyone who breaks the law, you can immediately be deported. Any crime is a deportable offense. I mean, beyond traffic, speeding. You get a DUI, you can be deported. If you get caught shoplifting, you can be deported. And so what they need to do is go through all those people and say, everyone who's been arrested for any kind of crime, they can kick out, and they should. And then there are people who have been naturalized, but if they were naturalized fraudulently, you think Ilhan Omar marrying her brother, people lying on their applications, misstating their histories, things like that. You can roll back their citizenship and say it was granted based on false information. And we've done that in the past. We've had war criminal, Nazis that lived in the United States for 60 years and then got caught and were deported back to Germany. And the one I remember most vividly is John Demjanjuk. And he was from Cleveland. He worked in the car in auto factory for his whole life, retired, but then they found out he was a prison guard at one of the death camps, and they shipped his ass back to Germany. They stripped him of his citizenship and shipped him out.
Yeah, I remember that one happening. Randy, question for you. What do you think local law enforcement should be doing as far as monitoring these bad apples in Dearborn, Minnesota, etc.? I don't know if you caught it or not, but the cops in Australia are now guarding mosques to protect them after the slaughter at Bondi Beach. Clearly, that's not the right way to proceed.
Well, when you mentioned earlier that Australia isn't Europe, we might as well consider it now, right? Yeah, sure. Geographically, they're two different locations on the planet. They're not really that far apart, but they definitely aren't politically anymore, correct? I mean, certainly when it comes to this Islam thing and Muslims, we're seeing the same thing in Europe, in the UK, that we're seeing in Australia. I mean, exactly. So again, we can look forward and see that's what they're going to try to push on us, folks. That's exactly what we can expect to come, because these folks are going to use them to push their agenda through. So I'm sorry, Chris, what was the other part of your question?
No, just wanted to get your thoughts on local law enforcement monitoring this stuff.
Well, it comes down to what Jeff said. One, I don't know how much right now local law enforcement is going to do, because as we've all mentioned many times, and many people even in the thread have gone to their local law enforcement, they get the big, you're crazy. Hey, yeah, we got you, but we haven't heard anything about that. That's some kind of conspiracy theory. So they're not going to. What we should be doing is federally exactly what Jeff said, but we also said it last week. Heck, now who knows, because it's the press. So we don't really know who ICE targeted first, right, with deportations. We know they said they were going to do criminals, right? But you would think it was just Latino criminals, but if you watch the news or if you watched the Latino community in California and places like that, or certainly LA. But we should have targeted all these folks that are Islamic, that came in through the 4 years of Biden, but any of them that have come in, because what have we said before? It is known that people from Hamas or sleeper cells from Iran and other Islamic countries that are not our friends have been here since the 90s. So we know that there's been a small group and it's built over time. Well, it's 2025 now, and we had 4 years of Biden when everybody could come in. So why wouldn't we be removing those first? Local law enforcement should just be paying attention to who they are and where they are, where they're staying. And I don't care if people want to call that illegal. If it is, so be it. But we need to know where these people are, where they live, where they, what are they doing day to day? And someone needs to be building up a matrix on these folks of what their sphere of influence is, what their network is, and all that good stuff.
Check out this comment from our friend Father Duck. In Orlando, all the way down to Boca, the PDs are protecting their mosques, and they are, meaning the worshipers are also heavily armed. So I don't agree with our law enforcement.
Well, why is it, and I don't care what country it is, why is it that you can get thrown in jail or ticketed? I think you said thrown in jail, wasn't it, earlier, for praying on the street if you're a Christian? But now, even here in the United States, we have cities playing prayer 5 times a day for Islam. I mean, it makes no sense, except for it's being allowed. It is going to be the mechanism.
Let's kick off the first audience poll. If you think that our law enforcement agencies should be protecting mosques here in the homeland, put a 1 in the live chat. If you think they should not be protecting mosques, put a 0 in the live chat. Moving on to the next one from Amy Mack. Warning: France was the crime scene. America is next. Everybody is suddenly acting outraged and shocked. Paris is canceling New Year's Eve celebrations on the Champs-Élysées because of security fears. And the media is acting like this came out of nowhere. Out of nowhere? Where the hell has everyone been for the last 10 years? Did everyone forget January 2015 when the staff of Charlie Hebdo, were hunted down by Muslims and executed in their own newsroom for the unforgivable crime of drawing Muhammad? Cartoonists, editors, police officers slaughtered over ink and paper. Did everyone forget November 2015 when jihadists stormed the Bataclan Theater and massacred and tortured 90 people to death at a concert? Not soldiers, not politicians, civilians, for being Western, secular, non-Muslim, while shouting the Islamic battle cry, Allah Akbar. Did everyone forget Samuel Paty, the French school teacher, beheaded in the street in 2020 by Muslim migrant for daring to teach a lesson on free speech using Charlie Hebdo cartoons? Did everyone forget Father Jacques Hamel, an elderly Catholic priest, dragged to the altar in 2016 and slaughtered during Mass, his throat slit for the crime of being Christian? Did everyone forget Nice, where a jihadist drove a truck through a Bastille Day crowd and mowed down 86 people celebrating France itself? Did everyone forget the kosher supermarket where Jews were murdered simply for being Jewish in public? The list goes on and on and on. I've been documenting the slaughter for over a decade for you. This isn't ancient history. This is modern France, a country living under the permanent threat because Islamic violence was explained away, excused, sanitized, and politically protected for years. And now Americans are acting stunned that Paris doesn't feel safe hosting a massive New Year's celebration. That's not shocking. That's willful amnesia. France didn't collapse overnight. It bled slowly in public while elites looked away. The warning signs weren't subtle. They were written in almost daily blood. And anyone who spoke up was smeared, silenced, deplatformed, left to stand alone while the rest pretended this wasn't happening. Our politicians didn't just fail. They lied. They watched France descend into fear, censorship, and ritualized violence. And instead of stopping it here, they imported the model. Borders erased, warnings suppressed, truth labeled hate. Executioners imported, and the invasion justified, even as they knew exactly what it did to France. France was not an accident. France was the case study. And America's being lined up as the sequel, while our communities are being Islamized in real time and still no serious action is taken. America is on a crash course. The jihadis are already here. 2026 is the time to elect leaders who will actually act. We must demand answers from every elected official about how they plan to stop Islamic infrastructure, land grabs, and ongoing accommodation. Enough. Whew, she said a mouthful there. I'm going to come to you first, Jeff, and give me the high-level overview of the evolution of this, not just in France, but Europe and Great Britain as well. This isn't limited to just one country, right? You're on mute, Jeff.
No, this is the entire EU has this mentality, and it started probably back in the 60s and 70s when Germany was running low of labor and they imported a lot of Turks. But what Germany didn't do, they didn't give the Turks German citizenship. And even if they were born in Germany, they didn't give them German citizenship. That was a big sticking point for a lot of people for a long time. Well, their birth rates continue to go down, and so they keep importing more and more people. And a lot of it is they think, well, we have this massive social safety net which requires taxes. We're an aging population. We're not having enough kids. So if we don't import workers to do the labor, to pay the taxes, to support the system, it will collapse. Now, the big question is, doesn't that sound familiar? We've got the same thing going on here, folks. We have more, the government has promised more money than it can pay.
Jeff, let me ask you another question. How has Hungary's laws, regulations, whatever you want to call them, worked out where they reward families for having more kids? And I think if you get over 4 or something like that, you don't pay any taxes or something to that effect.
And that's not new either. I had a friend when I was in college, so that's a long time ago, and he grew up in Europe. And he had he went to boarding school, and this kid was an American, but he was in boarding school in Switzerland with my friend, and they lived in Austria, and his mother had a child, and someone from the Austrian government showed up and gave her a big fat check for having a kid. And she goes, well, I'm not Austrian. I'm an American citizen. I'm just here because my husband's here on business. And they're like, we don't care. You have a kid, you get a check, because they wanted to kind of boost their birth rate. And so now, instead of encouraging the natives to have children, they're just importing, the third world. And you import the third world, you get third world problems. And that's Europe in a nutshell.
And I didn't know that, Jeff. I appreciate the education on that. So quickly, before I go to you, Randy, incoming message from Carnivalt that eating Carnivalt meat will make you better looking. And clearly, Randy's a fine example of that. The timing couldn't be better for me to receive that text. But Randy, my question for you is, what are your thoughts on the globalists, the money kings behind this? I personally think the whole thing has been planned out by them to destabilize the world in pursuit of Agenda 2030. And I think you're of the same mind, but I'd like to hear you in your own words.
Well, Chris, when it comes to Carnival, I also heard it makes you more patriotic. So maybe you should force feed it on some of the population that isn't, and we'll see what happens. Right? Hey, it's a vaccine. You should take it because it works and it will protect you from everything.
Too funny.
Yeah, so absolutely it is. Why? Because because they have willing partners too. You have to look at it. What do the Muslims do? It's a playbook now. It's not just the Palestinians, right? None of the Muslim countries, none of them want any of the Palestinians. Why? Because the Palestinians do the same damn thing that they do, right? First, they get a few people in the country. And what is the playbook? I mean, we know what it is now. It's well documented. We get a few people in there, and the first thing we do is start complaining about how we don't have any rights. And people are stepping on our rights, and they're offending us, and they're offending our profit. And the next thing then they start curbing that a little bit, and more people come. And as time goes by, as we know, then they start taking over by getting Well, once they get the numbers, then it turns the other way, correct? And then we've seen them flip many countries, and it's the same way. And believe you me, they are not as friendly as they pretend to be, because they come in and, and do the whole poor as me. And they do the Islamophobe. That's one of the things that is one of their tactics all from the beginning. It's Islamophobe and a phobia, and y'all aren't treating us good. But when they get the numbers and they flip the switch, they don't care about what you think or how racist it is or how evil or mean. They are straight up mean and very evil folks. And, so they will, certainly for Christians, it's not a good thing, or anybody else that doesn't see things their way. And so I absolutely believe that this is orchestrated. It's why it's been successful in all these Western countries we've seen over the last 20 years, and it's been allowed to continue, even though everything, if like normal people would look at it, well, they started becoming gangs on the street and beating people and using knives, and now they're raping folks and women, lots of them, and having gang rapes. Any normal society would do something about that if they wanted to make sure it was actually safe, right? They would do something about it because they got them there after all to begin with. If we really wanted them out, if the people that were in charge that make this happen really wanted them out, this wouldn't be happening to begin with. But it's going to serve a purpose for these folks. And watch, that's what we can expect here next. That's what's going to happen. And it's one of those places that I think may come where the straw that broke the camel's back will, so to speak, right? That may be when people finally realize we're actually in a fight.
Great pun, by the way, well said. And I don't know if you noticed it, but Manley said, true American hero, Randy Rocket Brother, you handsome son of a bitch. It's all the carnival. I'm telling you, it's carnival do wonderful things. I have it on authority that they tested this and that it will make you better looking. Next one up, Islamist terror attacks in the U.S. are becoming so common that we are becoming numb to them. How many remember that 14 people were murdered in New Orleans on New Year's last year by an ISIS follower? Our threat environment is increasingly resembling Europe. Jeff, I want to ask you, he specifically says we're being desensitized. How have they achieved that? How have they desensitized the American populace to this? You're on mute, Jeff.
Okay, I was on my mic. Part of it is I just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, which, okay, you think would ratchet up the tension, but the media keeps downplaying it.
Yeah.
When you have an Islamic attack, they don't want to call it that, and they go out of their way to not call it that. And it's a standing joke when they won't tell you the color of the attacker. You know what the color is of the attacker. If you want to know the motive, you just listen to the press, and when they say no one has a clue what the motive is, oh, okay, it's an Islamic terrorist. Because if it's anything else, if it's an Islamic terrorist or a trans person, they don't say anything, and that's how you know it's one of the two. If it's anybody else, boy, they're right out front. If heaven forbid a white guy shoots somebody, this white perpetrator, hell, even if he's not white, they'll call him white. We've seen that too. Some guy be, black as pitch, and he's a white man. Really? You have a different definition of the word white. And the FBI did it for years. If you were Hispanic and a victim, you were Hispanic. If you were a Hispanic and a perpetrator, you were listed as white.
That's right.
In the official stats. So that's how you get numb to it, because people don't, they're basically told, don't believe your own eyes. Listen to us instead.
Absolute craziness for sure. So, Randy, same question for you. If you have anything to add to it, if not, just give me your general opinion of the fact that it seems like the vast majority of Americans are completely desensitized. You've talked about the cycle before, right? How something gets to the top of the news cycle and it no sooner dies down than the next thing replaces it. Is that part of the thing here, Randy?
Well, I think really I don't have much of that, because I would agree with Jeff and what you said. They're not numb to it. They don't think it's happening. How many times have, even when we've looked, I remember when you showed me that website that we just checked out again the other day, and it's over 48,000 since September 11th. And it was over 46,000, I think, when we first signed on there, wasn't there? Something like that.
It was. That's correct.
And even then, we were like, whoa, we had no idea. I had no idea. I knew there was a bunch that they don't talk about, but I had no idea it was to that magnitude. So it's not desensitized. It's because it's not being put out there.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Next one up is pretty disconcerting. Coming to you first, Jeff. Investigation of Fort Detrick lab finds hole in hazmat airtight suit was intentional. This is one of our most secure biological sites, like biological research facilities, I should say. I mean, what are the implications of purposeful sabotage happening there?
Well, yeah, I knew several people that worked there, and I used to collect for them back in the day. Depends on the suit and where it's used. If it's a level 4 suit, that's a big deal because they work with Ebola and Marburg and smallpox and all the really nasties that are fatal.
BSL 4. What does
Biosafety level 4, which is the highest.
That's what this was.
That's okay. If it's a BSL 4 lab, that's a big freaking deal. Now, if it's intentional,
hey, Jeff, I apologize. Are those things assigned? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I know you'll be able to answer that. Although, because I know in a lot of government things, each thing you have to sign for a sensitive item because each suit belongs to a specific
I'm sure
person.
Either that or the researchers who work there have their own, but they're inside. You don't take it in with you. You go into an outer room, you strip off your clothes, you put on the BSL 4 suit, then you go into a kind of a baffle, an ante room, which is sealed. They usually decontaminate you with sprays because they don't want you taking anything from the outside into the lab either. And then you do your work in the lab, and then on the way out, you go back into a sealed room where you're decontaminated chemically. They spray these chemicals that kill anything on you. And then you go and you take off the suits, you hang them up, you put your clothes back on, and then you go about your day. But if you have your own suit and people know it, they'll have, you'll have your name on your suit. It's yours. It's, your size. If you're 6'4", you need a different suit than someone who's 5'3". So it may have been directed at a person. If I wanted to kill Randy and we both worked in a BSL 4 lab and he's working on some horrible dread disease, okay, I put a hole in his suit. But those suits are positive pressure. They hook up to a hose and they're bringing air in to the suit, and the suit kind of blows up, but it still vents. And so it vents into the lab, and then air from the lab goes through a HEPA filter to scrub it, and it's got UV and all that stuff. So even if there's a hole in it, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person inside is going to catch whatever's in the lab because it's a positive air pressure situation.
I appreciate the explanation. I mean, Randy, from somebody looking outside in at the military, it seems to me like there's some insider threats that may be more pervasive than we're aware of. I mean, what are your thoughts on insider threats inside of our Department of War?
Well, I mean, we know that's a real deal, and that's kind of why I asked that one question. I should have let him. He probably would have got around to it anyway. But I was wondering, okay, whose suit was this that actually ends up with the hole, and how important is that? How important was that person? There's so much that could go into it, you know what I mean? But obviously that's a controlled item. I would have never thought that you would have your own suit, that you would take one home or ever leave the facility with it. Yeah,
it would never leave the facility.
That's right. So you just check
that
in.
You would have a locker or wherever you would hang it up. No, it never leaves the facility. It never goes beyond that clean room where you change clothes.
Well, I would imagine also the level 4 is like a skiff, right? You're going to have to badge in and out of those rooms.
Yeah. It's the highest biological safety level that you can get. And
so my point to that is they should already know who put the hole in the suit, because there's cameras everywhere. You had to badge in and out. This shouldn't be a mystery. And then, when he says you wouldn't necessarily get what's in there because there's a hole in it. Well, if I know there's a hole in my suit, I'm damn sure not going in. I'm not willing to take that chance.
Yeah, they would have to go back and review all the video. I'm sure there's video in those changing. Well, there may not be video in the changing rooms though, because if people in there nude, they may not be able by law to videotape.
Well, I don't know. That just depends. You're in the military. Maybe they treated you differently in the CIA, but there's plenty of places that are like,
Well, but these are civilians. These are not. Most of the people that use SAMRIT are civilian. That's the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute for Infectious Disease.
Yeah, but aren't they still?
Most of the people who work in the labs are they're PhD types. They're not uniform.
But they all still had to get a clearance, right? They still all
They still have top secret clearances.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So these aren't just regular folks. They
No,
have
they
ways
call up their ass with a microscope.
For sure. And I don't know, pretty scary stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly after the accusations of COVID, escaping the lab.
But it could be something as simple as Bill put a hole in Bob's suit because he found Bob was banging his wife.
Somebody said something like that. And that could be very well true. Absolutely.
I mean, we had an astronaut, look at the training they go through, who drove halfway across the country in a diaper to try and kill her romantic rival.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on.
It just tells you how far people are willing to go.
Weird ass people in this world.
I guess so. So this post here wraps up the sit rep, but actually is a good lead in to the main topic for tonight. ICE, IDF, and the Palantir State, El Salvador, was the dress rehearsal. They perfected it on Palestinians. They industrialized it on migrants. They field tested it on El Salvador. Now they're scaling it to you. This isn't three separate stories, but one operating system. Occupation, tech/border, tech/global, control grid. From Gaza to the data center, for decades, Palestine has been the sandbox where the worst security innovations are born. The Israeli military has built vast biometric databases and facial recognition systems like Blue Wolf to tag and track Palestinians across the West Bank, turning entire cities into open-air labs for surveillance. In Gaza, AI-assisted targeting systems such as Lavender have been used to auto-generate kill lists at industrial speed with life or death decisions made by algorithms chewing through mountains of data. Israeli companies then export this tech as combat-tested and field-proven, polished sales language for, we tried it on a captive population first. This is the template: permanent emergency, permanent exception, permanent data-driven warfare. Number 2, ICE, occupation logic at the U.S. border. Now take that logic, swap the label from terrorist to illegal, and you arrive at ICE. Palantir slides perfectly into this architecture. Since 2014, Palantir has built case management systems for ICE that fuse together DMV records, utility bills, criminal databases, and more into a single searchable panopticon. Those tools, Falcon and related platforms, power arrest targeting, workplace raids, and fast-track deportations. Even polite liberal outlets admit it. Palantir is one of the private architects of the surveillance state, knitting together ICE's data so agents can hunt people down with a few clicks. Meanwhile, DHS co-funds joint threat detection and drone programs with Israel. Israeli firms like Elbit and Paragon sell the same radars, towers, and spyware they used around Gaza and the West Bank to U.S. agencies along the southern border. The point isn't just migration control, it's practice, refining the tools, normalizing the methods, and building a shared doctrine. Treat human beings as data points to be scored, sorted, and neutralized. Number 3, and the final one, El Salvador, prototype for the Palantir age. Enter El Salvador, the miracle case the West can't shut up about. On paper, it's simple. Take the former murder capital of the world, unleash mass arrests, and voila, crime plummets. But under the hood, Bukele's government declared a rolling state of exception, suspending basic rights and locking up more than 80,000 people with little or no due process. Journalists and activists were hacked with Pegasus spyware, NSO Group Israel, while the government built new digital infrastructure under the banner of public safety. A mega prison, the Terrorism Confinement Center, was constructed as a high-tech warehouse designed as much for spectacle as for security. Layer on top, Bitcoin Nation, brand marketing pushed by foreign crypto influencers, and Western PR fixers. And of course, El Presidente's wife is a Chosenite in a country with maybe 100 Jews total. Somehow the presidency still ends up married into the tribe. Wild coincidence, I'm sure. And now the next phase, reprogramming the kids. Bukele has just inked a deal with Elon Musk's XAI rollout, the world's first national education program with AI. Grok branded software will be adapted into a tutoring system for every public school student in the country. One hand disappears a generation of young men into a mega prison. The other hand personalizes the minds of their little brothers and sisters through a centralized AI brain. Now zoom out. This isn't crime control. How fast can you flag gang suspects at scale? How many people can you disappear into a prison complex before the world shrugs and moves on? How easily will a population trade its rights for the image of order? And there's more below, but that graphic says a mouthful itself. Jeff, coming to you first, what lessons do you think our intelligence agencies learned from El Salvador's mass incarceration program that you think they may try and implement here?
Well, El Salvador's incarceration program was in response to record high crime. They had the highest murder rate in the world, or at least in the Western world. And they finally said enough, and Bukele went in, and he did what a lot of people in here have done, which is, hey, when we arrest people who are criminals, we're going to put them in frickin' jail. We did that through the 80s and 90s. And, Rudy Giuliani in New York did that. They said, we're not going to tolerate this crap anymore. And the crime rate in New York plummeted. And then the Democrats came in and said, well, they're all just misunderstood and they had rough childhoods, and so we're going to let them out. And then you get the chaos that goes on now with, innocent women being stabbed to death on trains for no other reason than they're white. So I don't think El Salvador was part of some master plan. Now, did the people involved say, here's an opportunity for us? Absolutely. Sure they did. And if you're someone who makes surveillance systems and a country says, okay, we want to install surveillance systems, you're going to go, we've got that. But that's really not new. Chicago's had put, the little crime cameras up back in the early 2000s, but they always go overboard with it. They always go too far, and they stop from looking at criminals to looking at everybody else, because to them, criminal is someone who disagrees with them. It's just like we're going to stop hate speech, but hate speech is any speech we find inconvenient at the time. So I don't think El Salvador was some massive grand conspiracy. I think it was a country that just got, fed up with they're getting shot all the time. And now it's one of the safest countries in the Western world. So, you can, is there good with the bad? Absolutely. But we always say, every time we see one of these nutcases who's been released for the 17th time and then goes out and kills somebody, we say, why aren't we putting these people in prison? Well, El Salvador said the same thing, and they started putting them in prison. And the idea that the Israelis have some magic, technology, well, if they have it, it sure as hell didn't work for them 2 years ago in October when, 1,300, rabid Palestinians went out there and slaughtered, 1,300 people. That's not a really good advertisement for your security systems.
Right.
I wouldn't look at them as being the paragons of virtue when it comes to this sort of stuff. It's like, how come it doesn't work for you? You're selling it to me, but it doesn't work for you.
Yeah, good point. So, Randy, do you think this integration between Palantir and law enforcement is essentially creating an unaccountable surveillance state that bypasses our constitutional rights?
Oh, absolutely. Not far. I mean, this is the last thing we would want. It's the last thing we would want because, again, as he's already mentioned, when's the last time we had anything that they didn't abuse or that the people at the top Well, let's even take the central banking system, right? Why did we not want the central banking system in this country to begin with, and did not until the early 1900s, right? Or somewhere in there. And it was because there's always a family at the top, and it's the same one. Everybody knows the name. That becomes corrupt because they have complete control of all the money. So then when everybody, including countries, has to go borrow money, they have to go borrow it from them. And then they set and dictate said terms. And then you look at where we find ourselves today, because those people have a lot of control. And, you know, this right here, this apparatus would give them complete and total control of every part and every aspect of every day of our life.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. So
it's the worst thing that could happen to us. And this is certainly the thing that our forefathers warned us about before they even knew this type of technology existed. And further to that point, don't think that they hadn't already used it in Ukraine too. It wasn't mentioned in the article, but like Jeff said, why Venezuela or whatever country we're talking about? Well, because it was an opportunity. Ukraine was a great opportunity for them to marry up these kind of tools as well. And we talked about that when we talk about SOPs for the drones for both offense and defensive terms. That is definitely going to apply AI. That's a given.
I can't think of a better word to describe all of this other than dystopian. This is something you would expect to see from a sci-fi movie, not here in the United States of America. But
well, you know, when you read the book, the 1984, and the Big Brother that could see everywhere and hear everything, you thought back then, because I read it somewhere in the mid 80s, right? That's when I had to read the book. Hello, they can't even do this. It's impossible. This can't be done. But not anymore.
Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? And by the way, when I said there's a lot more to this. This guy, Sir Escanor, man, he did a great job. But check this out. This is the balance of it. I only read down to that image.
That's right, El Salvador. I apologize.
It keeps going all the way down to there. There's 7 points, but I barely read half of it. He makes some phenomenal points. But as I mentioned before, it's a great pivot into our main topic tonight. Just want to quickly mention a couple things. Number one, somebody, I didn't catch the name, put "Bring Back the Crusades" in the CommieTube chat, and it was censored, so I allowed that. And then I got a message from Reno, which is good news. So I mentioned this copper company last month. Vizsla is their name, and they went public as a penny stock, and he just got a notification this morning that it's gone over $1, so it's already jumping. So if you had a chance to invest in Vizsla Copper, good move, by the way. And before we get into the main topic, just a quick note. If you go to survivaldispatch.news over the next 48 hours, I'm running a 40% off sale on annual memberships. So you get access to all 6 of our encrypted channels. We have an exciting announcement coming on that in a couple days here as well. You get enrolled in our SDEN system, Survival Dispatch Emergency Notification System, which are emergency notifications that go to your email, our Substack, the Signal channel, and the POClink radios if you have them. Pardon me. I'm working on putting together an HF net, so ham radio, shortwave, high frequency net for people to check in as well. We're probably going to split that into different segments across the country. And Dr. Mike and I have an upcoming video on comms choices. We've actually put together an entry-level package. We don't sell hardware, so it's just our recommendations. Click a link, go buy. You can do a Zygu G90 with an MP1 DXG antenna, get all the bells and whistles that go with it. But instead of buying their tripod, there's one on Amazon that's $85 that's intended to hold like theater lights on it. And it's amazing. It's heavy duty, but you can also mount vertical antennas sideways to do near range. It's called NVIS, near vertical communications. Then if you want to get further away for DX, you just stand it up. That whole package comes to around $800 change. It's a really economical way to get into Walking Dead comms. I don't have affiliate relationships. I don't have any codes. We've funded this out of our pockets entirely because we want to bring you the best comms choices, and it's something that's in my wheelhouse. And when we run polls, especially email polls, Food, water, shelter, clearly the top things that people are worried about. But when it comes to immediately after that, it's defending oneself with firearms, and comms are always neck and neck after that. So that's why we bring you that type of information. So moving into the main topic tonight, this is predictive policing and digital prisons. Think of it as pre-crime enforcement. Now, there's 144 episodes in this series that Khalid and I wrote, all predicated on being post 9/11 2.0. As long as you have that piece of context, you can watch any of these videos and get value out of it. If you're new to our group, I'll cover this really quickly. 9/11 2.0 is the intelligence brought to the table by Khalid Muhammad from Command 11 in Pakistan, showing that the Islamic Army, which is the banner now that all of our enemies fall under as far as jihadis are concerned, they're all part of the Islamic Army. Taliban, TTP, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, ISKP, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, all of them. So their plans are to attack 10 to 15 of our tier 2 cities, population 100K to 500K. Each city, 10 to 15 sleeper cells. Each sleeper cell, 4 to 12 jihadis. They will start by attacking soft targets like schools, for example, but the secondary and tertiary attacks will be worse than the first ones because these will be run remotely from a command and control center in Afghanistan, just like Mumbai 2008 and Paris 2015. These are called CCTAs, complex coordinated terrorist attacks. And what that means is that the command and control group in Afghanistan will be monitoring social media, legacy media, and they will be able to instruct the sleeper cells to pivot. Hey, wait a minute, don't go to X, go to Y instead. First responders are almost there. Make sure you have your VBIEDs loaded. They want to kill as many first responders as they possibly can. So that's when they start letting off vehicle-borne IEDs. Then they will work their way through those cities to the level 1 trauma center, and there'll be only one of them in those tier 2 cities. And a huge psychological effect. But by sieging a building with 3,000 to 5,000 people in between hospitals and employees, and then being able to use that to broadcast horrific videos, decapitating, murdering, torturing Americans. And this will go on for quite some time. We have a limited number of resources in our country that are trained in unsieging buildings of that size with that number of hostages, basically without having casualties. Randy and I had an extended discussion on this. We have lots of guys who could go in and just blow everything away. But if you want to actually save the people in there, there's only a handful of teams that have been trained for that type of operation. So with that being said, tonight's episode, Predictive Policing and Digital Prisons, Pre-Crime Enforcement, is post 9/11 2.0. Little piece of context. What happened post 9/11 1.0? We ended up with the Patriot Act. What did the Patriot Act do? It took away our rights and freedoms. Some of it has been codified since then. Some of it, they said, well, it's the sunset on it, but they've brought it back to the table under other legislation. To have a look, just do a search on any AI and say, what do you think is potentially going to be in Patriot Act 2.0, and prepare to be shocked. It will be some really, really bad stuff. So essentially, at the end of the day, you're talking about algorithms deciding guilt before any action has been taken, and then either putting you into a digital prison or a brick and mortar prison based on that. And at the center of all of this, of course, is Palantir, which is probably the most evil corporation of all time. This goes beyond BlackRock and Vanguard. Stuff is just downright scary. And you don't have to think, oh my goodness, this pre-crime surveillance state is coming. No, it's not. It's already here. The initial infrastructure is in place. The algorithms are running. Legal frameworks are being written, behind the scenes. They're just waiting for 9/11 2.0 to flick the switch, because the sheeple will beg for the government to please protect me, and I'll give up whatever it takes, right? It's like everything else in life. First thing you do is decide what you want. Second thing you do is you decide what you're willing to give up to get it. The sheeple will say, well, absolutely, we'll give up those civil liberties to ensure our safety. And that's because Americans for decades now have outsourced their security on the whole. There's always outliers. But regardless, you're going to see certain groups targeted. You're going to see gun owners targeted. You're going to see conservatives targeted. You're going to see Christians targeted. You will primarily see real Americans TM Randy Nance, who value liberty being targeted. So with that out of the way, segment number 1, and as per usual, we have 5 segments of the main topic. Imagining the Nightmare of 9/11 2.0 is what I titled it. So picture this. Sunny morning turns into hell as coordinated blasts rip through 10 to 15 big American cities, tier 2 cities, so big enough, with hijacked trucks and drones slamming into landmarks, killing thousands in a heartbeat, leaving the whole country gasping for air. And right on the heels of that chaos, the feds start rolling out emergency powers that they've been itching to use. And they turn grief into a green light for total lockdown, where checkpoints pop up overnight and the sky fills with surveillance drones watching every move. And then as the smoke clears, people start whispering that this wasn't just terror. It was the spark for a new era where your phone pings a threat alert before you've even thought about stepping out, all under the banner of keeping us safe from the next wave. I mean, it's scary, scary stuff that they're taking this to the level of, hey, our algorithm says that there's a possibility that high possibility you're going to commit this crime. So we're going to put you into a prison of sorts to start with. So you're not going to be allowed to go on the internet. You're not going to be able to leave your 15-minute city. You're not going to be able to buy certain things. And the list goes on. And that's the digital prison side, with the potential for them to say, well, all the indicators are here and we know that you have this in your genetic makeup. So therefore, we're going to lock you up. If you want to hear how scary this is, and I think I have a tab open on this, is Palantir is suggesting that they can scan your face and based on your facial features, determine if you are likely to commit crimes or not. And then they go down another layer to different types of crimes based on your facial features. I mean, golly, this stuff is just ripe for abuse. So with that being said, Jeff, I'm going to come to you first on this one. Let me get myself off of here. And my question for you, Jeff, is what are the things people should be looking for as far as their rights being, chipped away at little piece by little piece as we march towards the Patriot Act 2.0? Because I think that when we were discussing in the sit rep how we've become numb to, these jihadi attacks, I personally think that when they just take a little bit of your rights away here and there, it's like boiling frogs, right? They just keep turning the heat up, and before you know it, you're toast. What are some of the things that you see already that are in place as far as social credit scores? Because that's a big part of this stuff going forward.
Well, we saw a lot of it under Biden. It's gotten better under Trump, but that's not to say if there's a big terrorist attack that it'll go back to what it was. When you had the government going to, Twitter, to going to the YouTube and all these places and saying, take this down. Not that what they were saying was illegal, not that it was promoting something illegal, but it just, they didn't like it. And a lot of times it was absolutely true, as we saw during COVID, people who would say COVID was more likely came from a lab leak than it did from, natural exposure. Well, they were shut down. They lost their jobs. They were kicked off of, off of Twitter and off of Facebook. And they were absolutely right. But they said what the powers that be didn't want you saying at that time. And if you start seeing the big social media companies start getting back into this wholesale, censorship like they did in the past, that's a big sign. We see it in England already, in Britain. They're already threatening these companies that if you don't take this down, we're going to fine you 10% of your worldwide income. That just absurd things. And they, we saw that one the other day where you had that one guy from Australia says, you don't have the same rights you have in America. Well, yeah, we know, that's obvious. And he doesn't seem bothered by that at all. So you're going to see little things, that stuff you could have done and said last week that you're not allowed to do this week. And then it's not going to be, it's illegal. It's going to be, it's frowned upon. You're going to be shamed for it. They're going to, oh yeah, you must be a Nazi if you do this. And if you go on Twitter, I mean, on X, you'll see these, I saw one yesterday. Some black woman said, if you use these phrases, it's just like saying the N-word. And it's like, yeah, but no, it's not. So that's trying to boil the frog. They've already said there's this magical N-word that nobody can say, well, except black people, of course. But They want to go beyond that because whites have already basically said, yeah, okay, we won't say that ever again. But now they want to expand that to other words, to other phrases. And they are controlling your speech. And when you control the speech, you control the person.
Yeah, true story, true story. Randy, I'm curious what your thoughts are on why do you think the jihadis picked 10 to 15 tier 2 cities? What do you think is the logic behind that on their part?
Well, I'm not sure. I would think that it comes down to, you were saying, roughly 15 cities, and they wanted roughly 50 to 60,000 casualties. I think when you broke apart the numbers of who they thought for sure that they could get in, like maybe not each individual person, but this level of training, this many folks, or this many of our trained individuals to this level. And then you said, how many cells per city, and then you multiply that out to how many to get to 50 to 60,000. I would think that's somewhere along the lines of, what the thought was. But as I said a long time ago, whoever helped them with this plan also was probably an American. Why do I say that? Because this is a pretty insidious plan, or you had to have spent a good amount of time here. And where in the underbelly could you get under those feathers, you know what I mean, and do some real damage? Where obviously we know if they except for I'd say New York City, right, or LA, because they're very big. Just like everybody knows, there's roughly 55,000 or rough somewhere in there police officers on the New York City's police department. So if you hit a huge city like that, now we know New York City wouldn't do anything about it. It would probably work out perfectly. But under normal conditions, or in a red state, we'll say in a red city, where they're actually going to try to do their best to stop you, right? So then, that in some of those, you're taking a gamble that would happen, and they have the resources to do it. Or like even in this Dallas-Fort Worth area, where you have these big, huge suburbs and any numerous amount of municipalities throughout this area, you overwhelm one, any one of the others, the 10 around them are going to be more than happy to come help out. So then you want to pick those tier 2 cities that are outliers by themselves, so to speak, in unprotected soft land. Those are targets right for that type of attack. And that's why I've said it from the very beginning. This is professional help. These are smart people that came up with the tactics on exactly what would hurt the most, and you might be able to inflict the most damage and have the biggest impact. And this would be some of that. I'm sure there's other options, but this is a very good one.
Well, I mean, that was a great off-the-cuff answer, Randy. Before we move into the next segment, I found that post. So you need to understand that the tech people with government contracts to access and record your biometric data genuinely believe they can determine someone's intelligence and personality and pre-crime potential based on the structure of their face. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on this before we move into the next segment? You're on mute.
Yeah, I know. I was just laughing. That's modern eugenics, for Christ's sakes. Back in at the turn of the century, 1900s, it was, they would measure the distance between your eyes and do all this stuff, and they had some magical formula. And then there was phrenology, which was another version where they would measure the bumps on your skull and determine if you were smart or you were a moron or an idiot, I think was the official legal term then. And it's just stupid because your facial expressions and if you're a kid and you get hit in the head with a board and you have a scar over your eye, does that mean you're going to commit crimes in the future because you look like someone who'd committed crimes in the past? No, that's asinine.
Yeah, I agree. So here's our friend Elevator Man. He's been with us for a long time. He's in Georgia. Think about Savannah, Georgia, tier 2 city with a tier 1 hospital, level 1 hospital, but being 3rd or 4th in the nation for shipping because of the ports. If I was a bad guy, just saying. And that's a really
I would agree with that. The only caveat to that, because if it gets nasty enough and we include the military, you have a Ranger Battalion. 1st Ranger Battalion is right there on Hunter Army Airfield, which is in Savannah. And then 40 minutes from Savannah, Georgia is Hinesville, Georgia, where 3rd Infantry Division with all their mechanized vehicles reside. That's where I lived as a private before I deployed to Iraq the first time. I lived right there in Hinesville, Georgia. So otherwise, though, he is exactly right. That is the kind of place that's isolated, it's by itself, and it won't get reinforcements.
Either one of you can answer this, but something else that's close is Beaufort, South Carolina. There's a base on an island there. I just can't remember which branch it is, but it's a pretty big deal. Is it the Marines?
I don't know. Well, I do know somewhere over there, right? Because somewhere is also Paris Island, but there's an Air Force installation there. I do know. I believe in Beaufort, but
yeah, and it's a hop, skip, and a jump from Savannah as well. So with that being said, we're going to move into segment number 2, how predictive policing algorithms really work. So all of these AI startups, they start by vacuuming up boatloads of data from your text messages, what you buy, what you surf on the internet, social media posts, and they crunch it all together to spit out, a risk score and flag you, as a troublemaker before you've done anything at all. And once that score lights up red, the system feeds it straight to the cops on the beat, who get nudged to patrol your block harder or pull you over for nothing, creating a loop where more eyes on you just pumps out more data to keep the cycle spinning. And the scary part is how it learns on the fly, tweaking its guesses based on past arrests, past busts. So what starts as spotting, gang-like activity, it ends up profiling entire neighborhoods that they would deem as powder kegs waiting to kick off. So, Jeff, I'm going to come to you first. I'm curious what your thoughts are on them pulling your shopping. Like, what do you buy? Where do you buy it from? How they would potentially put that into a profile that would get you flagged, besides buying constituent agreements for bombs and crap like that.
That's part of it. If you're a bomb maker and you're smart about it, you're not going to go to Home Depot and buy all the components there all at the same time. You're going to spread it out. Buy something from this store, something from that store, something from over there, and then bring them back together. But the other thing can be, are you abrupt changes in your pattern? If your pattern is to go grocery shopping every Wednesday and you spend approximately $150, $200 every Wednesday, and they can look at what you buy and it's normal stuff, it's toilet paper and hamburger and whatever, but then all of a sudden it changes radically to where you're going 2 or 3 times a week and you're spending 3-4 times as much on groceries all of a sudden. The algorithm's going to say, okay, what in Jeff's life changed? It might be that I had, somebody in the family moved in with me and they've got 4 kids and therefore we're buying Go-Gurts and all crap like that. Or it could be that you just had a bunch of jihadis move in the basement and you've got to feed them. So there's that. You look at clothing purchases, or now you're buying a lot of clothing, but you're buying it in different sizes than you did before. People can get fatter and skinnier, but they don't get taller and shorter. So they would be looking for changes in established patterns, and they can look at this by, you look at a past terrorist event, You've already identified the bad guys. Maybe they're all dead from police action, whatever. But you look at all that data and then you say, okay, let's go backwards. Where were their patterns? When did they diverge? What products did they buy? And then let's apply that to, the rest of the database and see, do other people pop out with the same pattern? And that might tell you something there. So there's something to be said for that. But do you really want to invade the privacy of everybody in the United States because you're looking for one or two guys? But what's a lot of this is it's public information. And if you're in a car and they've got in a city that has license plate readers, they can go back and, even if they're not looking at you this week, if you do something a month from now, they can go back and say, okay, let's pull up all the historical data and see where this person went. If they haven't flagged you before, they can basically flag you retroactively and then look at, okay, where did they go? Who else went there? Do other people at that location share the same general set pattern that they did? And so is that person a potential terrorist too? There's a lot you can do with data, and object-oriented databases is what they used to use in the old days, and now it's AI.
Yeah, legit comments there. Mike A says, I think based on these credentials, Nashville may be a target because of the huge medical infrastructure. I was just in Nashvillistan to film a TV show and was blown away at the massive number of Middle Easterners, many of whom spoke broken English or no English at all. I had an Uber driver tell me his daughter was a high school or probably middle school principal and that 88% of her students were from the Middle East and none of them spoke English. They had to use translators from them all. And Nashville, most definitely a possibility. Randy, what kind of error rate do you think these folks feel is acceptable? In other words, we know the technology is not perfect, but we consider it directionally correct. So therefore, if it gives us a positive on somebody, we're going to run it down no matter what. I'm just curious what your speculation is on what would be an acceptable error rate.
Well, if we just look at past history, back when we were kids, the things would look a lot better, right? But I think that's when at least medicine was still moving in the right direction. It hadn't turned to fully profit motives only. I think, let's just take chemotherapy for an example, right? Because that my girlfriend went through some about a year ago, and we've all known people that have. Well, chemotherapy came with the scientist that developed it, and I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but you can Google it. It's easy to find. This guy got it from mustard gas. And, everybody knows that chemotherapy is nothing but poison. It just doesn't kill the bad cells. It doesn't discriminate, it kills them all. And many times that's what actually kills the people. It's not the cancer. That's the unfortunate side of it. But my point to the whole story is when they first started, when the scientist back in the early 1900s, whenever he started working on it, again, you can Google it and it'll tell you when he came up with it. But basically, it killed the first several people, first 4 or 5. But because it stopped the growth of the tumor, they kept trying to use it. And it's still what the insurances will pay for today. One, because it's somewhere around the neighborhood of $56,000 per dose. And most people get 1 dose a week. Every week's $56,000 is what they're bringing in with this stuff. And even to this day, a lot of people do survive it, but look what it does to those folks. And certainly if a child has to go through chemotherapy, it's a crapshoot whether they're going to be whether they'll be sterilized or not, whether they'll be able to have no life beyond their own once they become adults. Some can, some can't. And it's not about how good it really does. It's if it's going to make them money and they can even get a partial success out of it, I think they'll run with it.
Yeah, well said, Randy. Would it surprise you that somebody on our main YouTube channel was censored for putting $5 signs in their comment? This message is held for review. CommuTube censors shut that down. They shut something else down
So
earlier.
it doesn't give you a reason why. It just says it was shut down.
Yeah, and I can show her height. I'm showing that one.
I'm just like, well, what for? What is wrong with the $5 comment?
No idea. Like if it's $5 signs in a row, but they censored something earlier, and I can't remember what it was, and I was going to mention it, and then I forgot to write it down. But it was a word that gets thrown around, but it's not something concrete, and they flagged it. I just can't remember what it is. But before we move into the next segment, check this out. The new Las Vegas Metro Police Cybertruck fleet features AI-powered real-time data analysis and predictive policing technology that can forecast crime hotspots and optimize patrol routes. We expect crime on Boulder Highway to drop by 50%. And there you have it. I wouldn't trust an electrical vehicle for nothing.
The advantage of Cybertrucks is that they already come with a boatload of cameras.
True story.
It's like body cams for your car.
Yeah, legit. Well said, Jeff. So, all right, we're getting ready now to go into segment number 3, the players behind the AI control grid. So you got big shots like Palantir teamed up with Oracle, and Larry Ellison is something else. Firsthand knowledge of that, by the way. Team up with feds who've been pouring billions into these tools since the old Patriot Act days, handing over code that sifts through emails and calls like it's no big deal. These outfits pitch it as a crime-busting magic. But under the hood, it's a handover your daily grind to suits who profit off every ping and patrol they trigger across the map. With contracts locked in from DC to local precincts, they're not just building the watchtowers. They're staffing them with algorithms that answer to boardrooms, not ballots, setting the stage for a lock-in that no vote can break. I mean, it's just, this is some insane stuff. So, Jeff, I know you don't come from the high-tech industry like myself, but who do you think the biggest, worst player of them all is involved in this on the tech side?
God, that's hard to say because there's so many. Sorry about the dog here. There are so many new tech companies that I'm unaware of. I mean, Palantir is pretty new. I don't think it existed 10 years ago. But you've got some of the. Excuse me, I'm gonna let the dog out before I kill him.
Well, while Jeff's doing that, I'll.
Of course, he waits till I'm on. He's been in here for the whole time, but
no worries.
But no, you've got some of the big players, but you look at the ones that are their futures in a lot of ways are tied to the government. They are the ones that are going to be less likely to resist government pressure to do something illegal or immoral. And you look at Microsoft. Everybody picks on Microsoft, but Microsoft is up to its ass in government contracts. You look at Amazon. Amazon Web Services is one of their biggest customer is probably the United States government. So you've got these companies that do this, that are involved, that are not in a position to say no or to say, yeah, we're not comfortable doing that. And so they're the ones that are going to fold to the pressure. And I think Google too, because Google does a lot of business with the United States government, a lot of the research and computing and things like that. And then, of course, the ones that the government can control them through antitrust laws and things like that. So those are the ones you got to worry about.
Would it surprise you to learn that Palantir Technologies was founded in 2003 by Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, Joe Lonsdale, Stephen Cohen, and Nathan Gettings, the company named after the Seeing Stones from J.R.R. Tolkien's works, started with a focus on data analytics for intelligence agencies.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I
did. Who's got a lot of data that needs to be crunched and has basically a bottomless budget to pay for that.
Yeah, well, good point, Jeff. Kind of leads into my next question for Randy. Randy, why do you figure that the government is going to private industries instead of doing it themselves, where they would have the source code and more control over everything? outsourcing it seems to throw an extra fly into the ointment as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think it's probably one of those intentional things, right? Because the people that are actually in control of all these little moves that no one seems to understand are the ones that are funding it, probably, or will be like Soros now that we've discovered he didn't really use his money through all of our NGOs and USAID and a couple of other of those agencies. They were using our own money and our own taxpayer dollars. I would say it probably goes along those lines of, because who's in charge and who's in control? People with real power that can make this type of thing happen.
I would add to that, Randy, that there's a very high probability of people being greased. So in other words, somebody
for sure
in the government hiring Oracle, Palantir, and then that person being comped on the backside for outsourcing.
Well, that seems to be how it works, because we can take uranium one with Hillary, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they sold, the State Department sold Russia 20% of our reserves. If I remember right, it took somewhere around 35 to 40, maybe 43 different signatures and the people in different levels of branch of government to sign off for that to legally happen. Every one of them got greased. It's just the way the system works. And this is no difference. Why they came up with it in 2003, and they're always very symbolic, right? And stuff. And just like it's the reason why they use J.R. Tolkien here, right? It's kind of in their like fantasy. We're lining everything up type thing. It's pretty crazy.
Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? Right?
I knew you were going to say that.
There are different reasons, some good, some bad, why that makes sense, though. Because, the government moves at the speed of government, which is not good. When I joined the CIA, we were still using monochromatic weighing computers, because it took so long to get a modern computer through the security process and everything else to use in the field. We were using these dinosaur weighings. So that's one. Private industry works so much faster. That's the good part. The bad part is that it also allows you plausible deniability. If you're going to Palantir and Palantir breaks the law or does something that, the Defense Department or War Department or CIA or FBI are not supposed to be able to do, not supposed to do, like collect data on U.S. citizens for the CIA's, situation. But if they do it and you don't tell them to do it, but you don't tell them not to do it, and they can kind of read between the lines, a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and they go and do what the government can't do itself. And we saw that during COVID. The government can't censor U.S. citizens' speech, but they can sure as hell go to Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and go wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It'd be really nice if that came off your system. And then it did. So they were basically, and it's illegal to do, but they were getting the private sector to do something they themselves were not legally entitled to do. And so and when you have that layer between the government and the private sector, that, that kind of a Chinese wall, it allows you to get the results you want without being on the hook for it. They can honestly say, we didn't say, that's not in the contract. And it's probably told person to person in, just in a meeting saying, hey, could you maybe do this? And if the company winks and goes, sure, we can. There's nothing in writing.
Well, I think Jeff's exactly right, but let's take it a step further. Let's just take Bill Gates, for example, and it's public knowledge because I've seen it in the print that he owns the patents to the research that's been done on how they can strengthen or weaken hurricanes, or if they can steer them, or any of that kind. He has several patents on that. It's public knowledge. Go look it up yourself. But why, when that stuff was developed in government programs in Antarctica for the, again, in the interest of public safety to help us curb that type of weather, why is he the one that ends up owning the patents? Probably because then he's in control of that said product, which, if that actually worked, think about the power this guy would wield with his own hands and his own, computer.
Yeah, legit for sure. So that's 3 segments down, 2 more to go. I want to put a quick shout out in for our sponsor. So I have a very opportunistic pit bull beside me right now because I have some of the Carnivalt dog treats, which it's human grade stuff. It's just too small for them to package for humans. So it's freeze dried chicken and steak, and it's raw, it's uncooked. Of course, this hasn't been reconstituted and won't be reconstituted, but our dogs go absolutely cuckoo over that stuff. So we've got a little over 24 hours left on Carnivalt's Christmas special, by the way. So every $100 that you spend between now and midnight tomorrow night at carnivalt.com, use the code EATMEAT, all one word, to get 10% off, by the way, except for subscriptions where the price is cut to the bone. Every $100 will get you a virtual raffle ticket. And on Wednesday, they're going to do a draw, and they're going to pick 5 lucky people who all get the same prize. You're going to get a bunch of Carnivalt food. You're going to get Carnivalt swag. And I'm going to give you a lifetime Survival Dispatch Guardians membership. If you're like me and you never win any of these raffles, you can go to survivaldispatch.news right now for the next 48 hours and sign up as an annual Guardian, get access to our 6 encrypted signal chats, our emergency notification system, and more. And it's 40% off until midnight Christmas Eve. And not to be forgotten, I can't believe the number of emails I'm getting from people now on the Wasatch Wagyu stuff. This is just incredible jerky. These strips in particular, oh my God, this is such addictive stuff. And they actually sent me some of Randy's favorite. Where'd it go here? Yeah, check this out. They sent me a bunch of elk jerky as well. So if you go to wasatchwagyu.com, they've given us a new code, by the way, gets you a bigger discount for Christmas. SD20 gets you 20% taken off. And what I'll do is I'll throw that in the live chat for y'all right now. wasatchwagyu.com, and code SD20 gets you 20% off. So with that being said, let's get into the next segment, flagging patriots, believers, and gun folks as threats. So out of the blue, system starts lighting up on churchgoers who pray a certain way, or dads who hit the range on weekends, tagging their sermons or ammo buys as extremist signals that bump their scores up. Somebody already mentioned, go buy 1,000 rounds of ammo, which in the grand scheme of things is next to nothing. But boom, all of a sudden you're flagged, you're on a list. And it's not random. This software code has been tuned to old watch lists that used to capture things like people doing Bible studies, or the word militia being brought up, or any type of, tactical training. During the Biden installation, it was actually illegal for private individuals to get together and do like militia style training. I shit you not. Go ahead and look it up. Don't go looking on liberal sites because you won't find it there. But anyway, pretty egregious stuff. But all of these things, pop up as red flags in these new systems. You could be having a cookout, for crying out loud, and somebody reports, hey, I went to a cookout at so-and-so's. They were open carrying. And it'll pick all that stuff up in your text messages, emails, even your phone conversations. You don't want to be spied on. Put everything in a Faraday bag before you open your mouth, or because turn it off, it doesn't solve the problem, by the way. So before you know it, you've got these, what we grew up with as everyday things, right? You go to church, you go to the range, you go buy ammo. Now you're getting a knock on the door, probably for social media posts that cause somebody anxiety, God forbid, just like the numbskulls in the UK, threatening, by the way, to, extradite us to Great Britain if we say something that goes against their narrative or hurts somebody's feelings. I mean, you want to start the second Revolutionary War? That's probably a good place to start. Well, what a retarded thing it was for that guy to say that, the head of the Metro UK police force in Great Britain. But at the end of the day, this type of technology, and keep in mind, I come from the high-tech industry, it's squeezing every last little bit of information out of your data that they possibly can. It's called big data, and it takes a ton of compute power to sift through mountains of data. It takes massive storage abilities, and it's absolutely scary what it can do. What big data can provide to us today versus 20 years ago, not even remotely close. What we thought of 20 years ago as sci-fi is now happening. And again, that's from somebody who spent decades in high tech. So Jeff, coming to you first, I mean, your father was a pastor, your grandfather was a pastor. Why do you reckon that faith groups get identified as prime targets, of being domestic terrorists?
Because they hold people to standards. And what some of the things they insist on or that they believe in, the left hates, right to life and things like that. And they expect people to be moral. They expect people to tell the truth. And the powers that be don't want to be held accountable. They want to be the ones holding you accountable. They don't want you holding them accountable. And religious people tend to do that. They have standards that they live by, and they expect others to live by similar standard.
Well said, Jeff. Very well said. Want to give a quick shout out. Thank you here to David. Thank you for the $20 tip. Appreciate that very much. Those of you who are on phones and can't read it because text small brothers, thank you for all the fantastic work information you provide. You guys are providing such a valuable service. Thank you. Appreciate the kind words and the donation as well. Thank you. So with that being said, before I come to you quickly, Randy, I forgot one thing from Carnival. Every time you spend over $99, forward your email receipt to support@survivaldispatch.com. If you're an annual member for the Guardians, I'll tack on 30 days for free every time that you do that. And I'm doing that quite a bit during 7 days a week, to be quite frank. So, Randy, similar question for you. What do you think happens to your social credit score under this type of scenario if you're a gun owner? You've not just ammo, but they realize, holy shit, Randy's got 10 ARs. Can you imagine? Who needs 10 ARs?
Well, it's going to kind of go in the way of, just like what Jeff was just talking about. You say, why would they deem you a domestic terrorist? Well, as we well know, just like we want, the Muslim Brotherhood to be deemed a terrorist organization, Antifa to be deemed as a terrorist organization, and any of the things that are helping finance them, including Black Lives Matter. Why? Because then that opens the rule, that loosens up all the rules and the laws that we have to protect your freedoms in this country. When you are deemed a threat to society, they're able to strip those away very easily. And then guess what? You have no rights. So instead of having to use a warrant to come into your house and take my 10 ARs and 1 million rounds, they just come in and do it.
Yeah, that's a scary prospect when you think about it. So before we go into the final segment number 5, I want to play part of this video from Robert Reich, who is an icon of the tech industry. AI surveillance state is real, and it's being built by Palantir. It's a 5-minute video. I'm not going to play the whole video, but I'm going to play enough that y'all get a little bit more exposure to how truly evil this type of technology is.
The most dangerous corporation in America is one you may not have heard of. It's called Palantir Technologies, a Silicon Valley tech company that may put your most basic freedoms at risk. Palantir gets its name from a device used in The Lord of the Rings. If this weren't such a serious subject, I'd spend the whole video making funny Lord of the Rings references. You shall not pass! I won't do that because there's nothing funny about the real dangers of Palantir. Think about this. What do AI, the U.S. military, domestic surveillance, and the tech oligarchy all have in common? Palantir, co-founded by far-right billionaire Peter Thiel and its current CEO, Alex Karp.
We buy a lot of things from Palantir.
In J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, a Palantir is a seeing stone, something like a crystal ball, that can be used to spy on people and distort the truth. During the War of the Ring, a Palantir falls under the control of the evil Sauron, who uses it to manipulate and deceive. Palantir Technologies bears a striking similarity. It sells AI-based data platforms that let their clients, including governments, militaries, and law enforcement agencies, quickly process and analyze massive amounts of your personal data, whether it's social media profiles, bank account records, tax history, medical history, or driving records. The tools that Palantir sells are used to help clients identify and monitor individuals like you. Why should this matter to you? Billions of your tax dollars are going to Palantir, and what Palantir is working on could be used against you. Early in his current term, Trump signed an executive order requiring government agencies to consolidate all of their information about you into one giant database, something that has never been done before. To help process this massive amount of information, Trump chose Palantir. Trump claims this is about efficiency. But as one Silicon Valley investor described it, Palantir is, quote, building the infrastructure of the police state. Data privacy experts warn that when government data is pooled together, it can be used by a tyrant to intimidate or silence opposition. The possibilities for abuse are huge. One of Palantir's major projects is a new immigrant surveillance system for ICE's deportations. We've already seen Trump target people or organizations he considers enemies. Imagine if he could punish or deny services to individual Americans based on their political affiliation, whether they've attended a protest.
All right, so I got to stop it there because now it's getting into, the political realm, and I'm just cutting.
Well,
it
we
off
know
there.
the reality is Trump would never use it for that, but the other side definitely would use it on him and the rest of us without question.
Well, the Biden admin already did a bunch of this stuff when they were installed. Jeff, did you want to add to that?
I'm sorry, but Robert Reich was he was a Clinton cabinet official.
That's right.
He was on Obama's transition team. He is about as far left as you can possibly get. And if he told me it was sunny outside, I wouldn't believe it until I looked out a window. He is a lion sack. And he's an economist who's been wrong on everything.
What's the rules for radicals?
Saul Alinsky.
Yeah, but what is it to basically tell everybody that the bad guys are doing what you're actually doing, right?
Yeah, projection. But
Wait,
he's a weasel. I wouldn't trust that sucker. I tell you what, if he's against Palantir, now I'm wanting to go buy stock.
There you go. Well, I'm not going to play this next video, but just another one. Founded with CIA money, run by billionaire Peter Thiel, Palantir's software powers ICE raids, predictive policing, mass data mining for law enforcement and intelligence agencies. They're now feeding the machine that watches everyone and answers no one while building a digital prison for the United States. They don't ask for permissions. They just sell the system to the people who already own you. And next one, how did we get here? Palantir's dangerous pre-crime and predictive policing software and making money in financial markets through predicting terrorist attacks. Whitney Webb explains how it all got started with retired Vice Admiral John Poindexter in the Patriot Act, the Total Information Awareness, TIA, technological extension of PA surveillance powers program at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, aka DARPA. So with that being said, let's get into the final segment here, and I titled it Slamming the Door in the Digital Cage and Fighting Back. So this whole setup that we've been discussing isn't some far off sci-fi, movie or story. It's live now, and you've got apps that geofence your steps. So in other words, track you and the places that you go to and visit. It also keeps track of what money you're spending, where you're spending it. And we've already seen them stop purchases. My wife purchased some stuff on the weekend that got our account flagged, and she had to allow the transaction because it was suspicious. We've had multiple reports over the past 4 or 5 years of people actually trying to purchase guns and their credit card not allowing the transaction to go through. And then when they called the credit card company, they said, yeah, well, we don't approve those types of purchases. This is not stuff that's coming. This is stuff that's already here, and they're just waiting to, turn it up, so to speak. So 9/11 2.0 is kind of like the perfect scenario for them to get the power that they always wanted 15-minute cities, all that crap, social media or social credit scores, etc. So the only way you can kick this stuff is you got to ditch the apps. You got to stack up cash, and I would recommend silver and gold coins as well. You've got to have your important conversations in person with no phones present, stuff in Faraday bags. You basically have to starve this machine for the data that it needs and craves to keep you in chains. And if you push back hard enough, it's possible that you can fly under the radar, but it's also possible that it could get you flagged because, hey, wait a minute, we were gathering information on Jeff MD, and all of a sudden he's gone dark. But we have reports of him being physically sighted at cookouts. He was in somebody's Facebook picture, those sort of things. But truly the only way to deny this is with massive numbers of people rebelling against us. And I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm afraid that there are too many sheeple amongst us that will go along with this, because if it just saves one life, it's all worthwhile. So in addition to what I just mentioned, Jeff, what other ways can you think of to starve this system of the data that it craves?
Well, there's, like you said, starving it of data, which is my first thing, but you stole it. Thank you for that. But the other one is give it bogus data. If you have a cell phone, you keep it on, keep it at home when you're out running around. You go out and you pay cash for something. You leave your phone, your credit cards at home. So if they're monitoring you on your credit card purchases and your phone activity and all that, you're at home all day. But maybe you're really at the range shooting, or maybe you're really at the gun store buying ammo, but you're paying cash for it.
I like Hearst Monkey's suggestion: each day do a Google search for something completely random.
That's another one too. That'll totally freak them out. Yeah, do a Google search on Hindu militantism. One day, and then do one on the Crusades the next day, and then do one on gay rights in Austin, Texas. What is the most gay-friendly store in Phoenix? Just be all over the freaking map.
Is that so that you can use the gay parking spots?
Yes, actually.
For those who haven't seen those videos, they're pretty funny. This guy puts up this sign in parking lots, says gay parking. And then when people get out of the car, he's like, hey, are you gay? And the person's like, no. Why are you asking me that? Well, you parked in the gay parking. I'm going to have to fine you if you're not gay. How gay are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Absolutely hilarious. But our good friend Manly, thank you for the tip. We really, really appreciate that. It's very nice of you, Manly. Great supporter of ours. Randy, here's a question for you. What happens to the average person who they're tracking like all of us, and you go off the grid for a week or more? Does it get you flagged for further investigation, or do they just leave you alone because you're not feeding the machine?
Oh, I guarantee you get flagged. Any kind of anomaly will get flagged, and that would be that. You're going to have to get off everything. I don't think just not using apps. You really want to not feed the machine. You're going to have to go, well, let's take Osama bin Laden. What did he do? Well, he got rid of all his technology. Now, I know not everybody wants to get stuck in one house. He went to another country and never walked outside of that house. Never went out so satellites could see him. Never used any kind of electronics. And all of, as you mentioned already, or Jeff did, I'm sorry, I don't remember which, but all his conversations then became face to face. He had one person to show up that he gave the message to that when it disseminated it. And when you look, and then we go, let's just take some of the Terminator movies, right? I know they're not real, but some of the applications of what we see and how they do will be real. And it's exactly what we'll have to do. If you look at some of those Terminator movies, how is John and all those guys, man? They are, scourges on the edge of society, scurrying along the very edges in the dark and in the spaces to where the machines can't see them. That's what's going to end up happening. And certainly if we talked about, Big Brother, well, I even take my neighborhood right here. I know in the last 5 years, Not only do we have one of those license plate scanners up by the freeway at the intersection, right? They have a couple through the neighborhood. So that means every single everything you're coming in and out this neighborhood every day, all that is being tracked. So at some point, as you mentioned, that all converges in on this thing they now have in government. Then you can bet, old boy was sitting there. He can talk what he wants, as we already mentioned. But when the left gets a hold of this kind of power, trust me, folks, you're going to feel it.
Absolutely. So I'll wrap up segment 5 with this. Look, it's really simple. Don't scan my face. Don't track my every move. Don't force digital IDs on me. Don't monitor my purchases. Don't build a digital prison and call it progress. And don't call me black-pilled. Privacy isn't extreme. Mass surveillance is. So well said on Jason's part there. And at the end of the day, this predictive police infrastructure isn't coming. It's already operational. It's scanning your digital footprint and assigning threat scores right now, just waiting for a big event so they can turn the power up on it, which will most likely be 9/11 2.0. And, all of us, our action items are critical, right? Do your best to reduce your digital footprint. Build analog backup systems, so things like cash, printed documents, dead tree format, right? All of that stuff, gold coins, silver coins, all the things that
you mean handwritten, not printed, because if you printed it, it still went through a computer. And believe me, they are reading your printers.
Yeah, you figure? No question there.
There is a lot of information in those printers, folks.
Boy, howdy. Ain't that the truth? So that's it for the 5th segment, and it is now that time of night. 3, 2, 1. My favorite part. All right. So today's hero of the day, Carnival hero of the day, Sarah says, this man is a modern day hero. 10 seconds. Teach your kids to change their oil and not their gender.
Amen.
If you support this man's t-shirt, throw a 1 in the live chat. I'm expecting to see a whole bunch of 1s from y'all. Make me proud. Show us how many 1s y'all can stack up in the live chat. So the next one, this was submitted by multiple guardians, multiple. And this is Paris. They saw 2 white helpless girls, so they attacked them. What happened to our beautiful and peaceful Europe? 14 seconds long. So we have a law in Florida that was just enacted this year that says if you're in this precise type of situation, it's kind of like you stand your ground, but different. You can drive through the crowd, and any assholes who get in your way that were trying to impede you and keep you hostage. Too bad, so sad. What do you guys think of that? I'm all in favor of that.
Put your foot to the gas.
Amen to that.
Better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6.
Amen to that.
That's what I was going to say. I don't give a damn what the law is right there. I know what is right and wrong and what's just. And if I'm in a crowd like that, hey, bad on you for being out there, because I'm going to hit the gas and I'm not letting off until I get far away from you guys. And however many of you get run over, get run over.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's what's happened in Europe's brutal, but 100%. If I saw the same thing, I'd be the same way as you, Randy. So, conflicted question of the night. Weeks after the collapse of society, one man in your survivalist group accused another of murder. The accused denies everything. The scene where the murder supposedly took place is far away. You couldn't really verify the facts without risking someone's life. It comes down to one man's word against another. If it were up to you to decide if the man is guilty or innocent, what questions would you ask, and how would you make up your mind? Jeff, I'm going to go. Well, actually, hold on a second. We always go to you first. Randy will go to you first on this one.
I was waiting to hear Jeff's answer.
No way.
Well, so really, it's we always talk about there's not enough context. So I go back to biblical stories like Solomon. Everybody knows, when he did what he did that made God happy, God said, "What do you want?" He asked him for more wisdom, which made God even happier and granted him wisdom that he said no one would have on the planet before or after him, with the exception of Jesus. So we can imagine Jesus was the most wise man that ever walked the planet. Solomon was number 2. So the story I'm talking about is the 2 women were fighting over the baby, and they couldn't discern who was the rightful mother. So they took him in front of Solomon, and then basically when it came down to, he said, "Okay, well, since no one can decide and both of you won't concede, and you both say you're the mom, well, let's cut the baby in half, and you can have half, and you can have half." Then one mom said, "Nope, that's it. Then she can have the baby. I don't want it to be killed, and cut in half." And that is when Solomon then awarded that woman the baby, because he knew that had to be the mom. The other mom was willing to let it be cut in half. One mom wasn't. She must be the real mom. So there has to be some details in this story, which we are not provided, that would ask that particular question. Like, who are both of these guys? How credible are either one of them or both of them? And is one of them a constant troublemaker or not? And then is the one that's claiming the other one killed going to benefit in some way because this guy's found guilty and maybe y'all kill him too? There would have to be some other details for me to come up with an exact question of how you would discern which one is telling the truth. And I'll pass and give over, because I have no doubt Jeff has probably got a more reasonable way to figure that out.
Actually,
Jeff,
I
you're
did that. I was going to get I was just going to get the professor from Gilligan's Island to make a lie detector out of coconuts and the.
Oh, there you go.
It's hard because there's just one word against the other, and either one can be lying. And Randy's got some very good points. You look at their character, you look at what you know about them. If one is a really solid dude and the other one's kind of shady, but even then you can't convict someone or sentence them to death just because maybe they're shady and you don't like them. The most I would do is, like, if there's one that really seems squirrely about the whole thing, maybe banish him from the group. But I'm not going to take a life with zero evidence.
I couldn't agree more. So I don't have a whole lot to add other than I would interview them with a group of, call it senior members of the community. And we were trained to do this when we did interviews at Sun Microsystems. So the right side of your brain is the creative side of your brain. And when people look up and to the right over and over and over again while they're answering questions, most of the time they're telling you a story. They're pulling it from that creative side of their brain. If they look up and to the left, that's the data bank. So not enough certainly to, execute somebody or anything like that. But I think you get a pretty good feeling when somebody else is asking questions and you're monitoring, you're watching their body language. What are they doing with their eyes? You can learn a lot as the observer and not necessarily the person asking the questions. Manly is just too generous. Thank you once again. Manly Thomas, just an awesome guardian. Chris, Jeff, Randy, thank you for all you do night after night. Keep us informed. Love each and everyone on this channel. Should we ever end up on the X together, just know I have your X. I believe that 100% from Manly.
I think we were too soft for Bruno. Look, he's saying we need 00711's answer too. So what are you saying, Bruno? There was nobody that gave you the BFE tonight? We didn't.
We know that's the default answer for college. So
right, yeah, and hopefully Khalid will be with us tomorrow night. He's still up to his ass in alligators, as we say here in Florida. So we'll be back tomorrow night, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, with the next episode in our Long War series, which is the censorship industrial complex. As you can probably tell, this entire chunk of 12 episodes is really focused on digital tyranny, for lack of a better word. Another shout out to our sponsors. Don't forget Carnivalt, carnivalt.com, code EATMEAT. Gets you 10% off everything but subscriptions. These dog treats are human grade food. The dogs go absolutely cuckoo over it. The beef is off the frickin' chain. Carnivalt.com, eat meat, but they're beef. No mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines. This bag weighs 6 ounces. It's 6 ounces of beef, and when you reconstitute it, which you can do in 5 to 10 minutes, pro tip, put some salt in the water and you'll reconstitute really quickly. Makes 1.5 pounds of raw steak, which is just phenomenal. Not to mention the fact these guys are hardcore Americans. Everything, the bags, the O2 absorbers, you name it's American. Some more great Americans are our friends over at Wasatch Wagyu. So WASATCH Wagyu, WAGYU.com. Use code SD20. They've upped their discount for you guys to S as in Sam, D as in David, 20% off with that. And as I mentioned earlier, 48 hours left to get a Guardian membership for 40% off the annual price. If memory serves me right, I think it takes it from $74.99 down to $45, if memory serves me right, which is a hell of a deal. We only run these sales typically Thanksgiving and Christmas. With that big of a discount, go to survivaldispatch.news, sign up there, and that price will stick with you, not just for this year, but it'll go on forever and ever as you renew each year. Get access to all 6 of our encrypted signal channels. Big announcement coming on that on Wednesday, by the way. And you get a whole plethora of other things that come with that as well. But that's it. It's Monday night. So Mondays and Thursdays, we have the tremendous privilege of Pastor Kessel ending the episode for us. So between now and tomorrow night, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America. Enjoy Pastor Kessel's.
America. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Absolutely. Enjoy Pastor Kessel's closing message.
Shall we pray? Precious Heavenly Father, we thank you for blessing this nation for 250 years. Lord, we pray that your blessing would continue on this nation. For the Bible says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. But how can we blame you as we, as a nation, have turned our back on you? For your word says, the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. Lord, I pray that we would stand strong on our foundations. For if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Lord, we thank you for the righteousness of your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you that we can have righteousness through him. Lord, I pray that you would guide and direct as only you can those in authority over us. Lord, I pray that you would maintain the foundation that this country has been set upon. Lord, I just ask that you would, again, help us as we desire to do only what is right, only what is good for this country, for our families, for our friends and those around us. Lord, again, thank you for the blessings that you have bestowed upon us. And may you get the glory and honor through it all. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.